Welcome to my Accent is No Accident podcast. I'm your host, Maritza Perez, and we are here today with America's leading anger elimination expert, Dr. Mort Orman. Dr. Mort Orman, MD, is an internal medicine physician and a 40-year anger elimination and stress eliminating expert. He has written 23 books on how to eliminate anger and stress without using drugs, relaxation exercises, or other traditional techniques. He is the creator of the 10-session Angry No More Anger Elimination Program and the Ultimate Stress Relief System and Training Program. Dr. Orman has led more than 100 anger and stress elimination workshops for doctors, nurses, lawyers, business owners, entrepreneurs, other professionals, the clergy, and even the FBI. He has also been the official sponsor of National Stress Awareness Month in the US every April since 1992. His newest book, Dr. Orman's Life-Changing Anger Cure, is scheduled to release in March of 2024. Dr. Orman, welcome to My Accent is No Accident podcast. It is an honor to have you with us today.
Well, thank you, Maritza. It's my pleasure to be here and speak with your audience.
Great. I was really looking forward to our interview and our time together today. But before we start, I'd like to start with a signature question that we have. Dr. Orman, what is your accent? Why is not an accident?
So I assume you mean what is my accent in life in terms of my passion, my mission, my focus, and the difference that I bring to the world. And I hope that I do bring value to the world and that it's something that a lot of other people don't have to bring. So I feel like it's my contribution. And that has to do with anger and helping people, live without anger and avoid all the many adverse consequences and complications that anger can produce. So that is my mission. That is my gift to the world. And it comes from, my experience as a human being, having a lot of anger when I was younger, but also, going into medicine, becoming a doctor, and seeing, taking care of patients for 23 years and seeing what happens to the angry people versus the not so angry people. And there's a very clear difference in terms of the things that happen. Angry people have, more illness, they have more divorces, they have more business failures, they have more trouble in their relationship with their kids. And they just have, they're more addictions, more accidents. There's just a bunch of negative things that happen when you're an angry, chronically kind of angry person. And as doctors, we definitely can tell the difference. We know the patients in our practice who are on the angry side and those who are, more easygoing in life. So, and we see over time, we see what happens. And it's not a pretty picture when it comes to anger.
And so that leads me to the first question that I had for you, because anger comes from any human, but medically, how do you define anger?
Well, there's different types of anger. I mean, there's lots of difference that we have, and you could break emotions into sort of positive, desirable emotions, and then you could say there are some negative emotions. Not that they're always negative or they don't ever have any positive aspects to them, but we tend to talk about like joy and happiness, as being positive emotions, and anger and guilt and sadness as being kind of negative emotions. But so that's the first thing, and then within the anger category, there's different varieties of anger. So you can start off with kind of mild, everyday kind of annoyances, irritability, irritations. That's anger, okay? And a lot of times people say, well, I'm not angry. I don't have an anger problem. But if you ask them, they're getting annoyed a lot. They're getting irritated and frustrated and all that kind of stuff. And then there are the people who are more obviously, they express anger, they get angry, you observe them behaving in an angry manner, reacting in an angry manner. And then all the way over on the other extreme, far extreme, is rage and violence and what we're seeing in the Middle East and other places, where it leads to war, it leads to physical, confrontations, and some of the videos we see sometimes, people beating each other up, all that kind of stuff. That's the other extreme of anger. So it's got that whole wide spectrum, and it's all this internally. It all ends up the same pathway inside. It's just different to different degrees, mild, medium, severe. But the mechanism is the same that's producing all the various varieties of anger. So that's how I look at it.
Okay, so when you were telling us about your accent, you also said that you started working with anger because you, as a doctor, realized that many people that when somebody experiences anger a lot, you realize that they get more sick. What sicknesses can anger cause?
Well, there are a lot of things that have been associated with anger. High blood pressure, for example, tense muscles, migraine headaches, tension headaches, heart disease, heart attacks, strokes, which also have to do with blood pressure in some cases. So, I mean, plus anger, it's been shown that anger can diminish our immune system, which then can make us susceptible to a whole bunch of immune diseases, autoimmune diseases, arthritis conditions, inflammatory bowel conditions, things where our immune system goes faulty and attacks our own tissues and cells. And sometimes stress and anger can affect the immune system in a way that it's less robust and it's less able to protect us from getting sick from these various conditions. So there are lots of health consequences of anger. Not to mention addictions is another one. Okay,
Okay.
Suicide. These are all kind of like endpoints of in some cases where anger plays a role in those situations.
So that only doesn't play a role on the person that gets angry, but it's a role on those that are around them that can be experiencing also sicknesses due
Very
to
much
the
so.
stress.
Very
And
much
you
so.
are, yes, and then you also talk about stress and how
Yes.
to eliminate and how to manage the stress in our daily lives. Are these two together, or are they?
Yeah. Well, a lot of people misunderstand the word stress and what it means. Okay, and they have different definitions of it. So and I've done this in workshops where I'm maybe 40 or 50 people in a workshop. And in the beginning, let's say it's an all day workshop on stress. In the beginning, I'll go around, I'll ask each person, what's your definition of stress? And in a room of 50 people, you're going to get at least 30 different definitions. Everybody's going to have their own individual definition that somehow they came up with. And then there's some standard, scientific definitions and psychological definitions. And there's tons of definitions of stress running around. To me, they're all missing the point. What I discovered 40 years ago, which was really liberating for me when I was dealing with a lot of stress, once I realized that stress was just a word, it was just a concept. It's a buzzword, actually. It's not a real thing in and of itself. It's just a label. It stands for something else. So when we say we're suffering from stress, we are not suffering from stress, we're suffering from something else. And it turns out what we're suffering from are various problems in life that are bothersome to us or are making, stirring up our physiology or causing us, to lose sleep or feel exhausted or feel overwhelmed or whatever it is. So we have these various problems, of which there are many, and we use this same word stress to talk about them all. So if we're at work and we're having a conversation at lunch and you say, oh boy, I was really stressed last week, and I say, I was really stressed last week too, neither of us has any idea what we're talking about, because you may have a set of problems in your life, or maybe a big one that came up, and I may have a different set of problems that I'm dealing with, but both of us are going to be talking about problems using this buzzword stress in place of saying, specifically what the problems are. So I see stress as this big umbrella that has lots of problem types under it. And one of the types of problems is anger that we put in this category of stress. Another type would be anxiety, for example. Another type would be relationship conflicts or marriage conflicts. Another type would be problems with our kids. Another type would be financial problems. So this big umbrella holds all kinds of problems. It's just one tiny little sliver. This is of a problem that human beings experience frequently that we call stress. A lot of times when people are angry, they say they're stressed. But in truth, they're angry. Okay?
Yeah.
In the same way that somebody who's anxious may say they're stressed, or they're feeling guilty, they may say they're stressed. But each of those emotions, anger, anxiety, and guilt, are separate problems that have different causes. So you don't want to lump them all together and call them stress, because then you lose the ability to focus on them individually and get at their root causes individually. And that's what I like to help people do.
Okay. So what is the purpose of getting angry?
That's another interesting thing. We have misconceptions about that too. So what most people think, here's how most people think. Something triggered me and I got angry.
Okay.
I saw something, I heard something, somebody made a speech, the government did something, my boss did something, my spouse did something, my kids did something, and now I'm angry. So it looks like it's a direct cause effect, 1, 2. The cause is the trigger, the effect is the anger. Okay? We see the cause, we feel the anger. And that's where it stops. That's where our understanding stops. It looks like a simple cause-effect process. It's a 4-step process, not a 2-step process. There's 3. It's a cause, then another cause, then another cause, and then we get angry. But the second and third causes are invisible. They happen inside our bodies. And our brains. We don't see them. We don't feel them. We don't know that they're there. All we see is the first trigger, and then the last part, which is the anger. And most people are not aware there's 2 steps in the middle they don't know anything about. They don't know what they are. They don't know that they're operating whenever they're angry. And consequently, they can't get their hands on the controls to be able to turn their anger off when they want it to be off and leave it on when they want it to be on. They're missing the two most important puzzle pieces that are not obvious, that are invisible. And that's basically, that's my accent. That's my value, is I teach people how to understand what's really going on when they get angry and show them how to identify those 2 missing puzzle pieces, so that now they have all 4 of the puzzle pieces on the table. They see cause, then cause, then cause, then effect. Okay, now I know why I'm angry. Until you can see all 4 of those steps, you don't really understand why you're angry. You think you do, but you're wrong.
Yes. Okay.
And when you have a wrong model of why you're angry, your attempts to deal with your anger are all going to fail, or mostly going to fail, because you can deal with the symptoms of anger without knowing the causes. But if you really want to get at the causes, you have to know what they are. You have to know there's 3 of them that precede the anger.
Exactly. So give me an example of something. For instance, let me put me as an example.
Okay.
Last week, I'm usually not an angry person, but last week there are certain things that we don't like.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was last week in a meeting, and with different individuals, different entrepreneurs, and then we were all so bumped up into a topic, and then 2 individuals came in later. And they started talking without knowing what was the topic or anything, just started talking about their lives.
Mm-hmm.
And we were going at the topic.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought it was, to me, something that I don't like is when you don't respect others.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that was very disrespectful. I'm like, why is it that your thing is more important than what we were talking about? First, you came late. Second, you interrupted. Third, now it's 50 minutes in the meeting, and you are still talking. So I got upset.
Yeah.
I didn't say anything, but I got upset to the point that I'm like, I'm gonna leave. I mean, this is obviously they took over. I'm gonna leave the meeting. And then I'm like, no way. Why am I leaving? So let's talk about that. Let's just
Okay.
don't pretend that I'm not a calm person and I didn't stay.
Okay. So the way I would look at that situation is that you had a triggering event. Okay, you're in the meeting. You've been in the meeting 15 minutes, whatever it is. There's a conversation that's been going on. Two people suddenly walk in. Don't even try to find out what happened before. They just start talking, and it discombobulates the people who were already in the room. Okay, and so that's a triggering event. Okay, now again, anger has internal causes as well. So that's where the 2 and the 3 causes come in. The first is a framework of ways of looking at the situation, and there's like 3 primary ones. And if you have to look at the situation in that way for you to generate the emotion of anger, okay? And you actually hit on one of them that you intuitively recognize is that you you judge well. There were little things they did wrong. Okay, they came late. They weren't considerate of the other people in the room. They just started talking about themselves without wondering about what had come before. Okay, so there's 3 things you identified that to you looked like they did wrong things. Okay,
Yeah.
so that's the first piece of the internal. First piece of of the 3-part framework that produces anger is somebody did something bad and wrong. And then secondly, somebody had to be somehow negatively impacted, inconvenienced, negatively impacted. And again, you hit on that as well. Okay, that you all were having a meeting discussing a topic, and now somebody's disrupted the mission, and it's taken it in a different direction, and it's not satisfying for people in the room. Okay, so there was a negative impact involved. And then you obviously blamed them for their behavior. You blamed them for being late. You blamed them for not being considerate. Okay, for interrupting the discussion that was going on and taking it in the direction they wanted to. So you've got the 3 primary elements that also got triggered in you. Okay, by them walking in and doing what they did. They're doing bad and wrong things. They're negatively impacting me and other people in the room, and they are 100% responsible to blame. I didn't have anything to do with it. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
that's the second cause. Those 3 things, and then there's a third cause, which is also invisible, is that your brain and your body. So those are like filters. Those first 3, those are filters in how you look at and perceive that event.
Yes.
And a lot of it's going to have to do with your own background, your own history. You are sensitive to people who are not respecting other people.
Other people.
Okay?
Yes.
There may be other people on the planet who don't have that same level of sensitivity that you have. So that might not have triggered anger or upset in them. Okay? They might have been, oh, no problem. We'll just go in this other direction. Who cares? For you, it was different. For you, it was a big deal. Okay, because it hit one of those sensitive buttons that you have. But anyhow, those are your filters, and then your brain and your body. The third thing that people don't realize that happens when you get angry is your brain and your body automatically, very fast, give you the impression that what's coming through those 3 filters is absolutely true.
Okay.
No doubt about it. That's what it is. That's how it is. The way I see it is the way it actually is. And when you have the way you see it plus the truthfulness of it, then the hormones start churning out that produce the feeling of anger in the body and in the brain. And all the other mechanisms, physiologic, biologic mechanisms. You got to have the triggering event. You got to have it filtered through the 3 filters, which we don't see. Mm-hmm. Then you got to have it stamped with truth, which our brains and body, and we don't see that. All right. And then you get all the physiology that produces anger. Okay, so that's a perfect example in your case of why you got angry, and what were the 2 missing puzzle pieces that you had parts of them. You intuitively recognized parts of them, but you didn't have them all, and you didn't have the third part, which is the truth stamp. Okay. And what the truth stamp is, it makes us not even want to question whether the things coming through our filters are absolutely true or not. And it turns
Okay.
out when we're angry, a lot of times they're not 100% true. For example, look at the last one. The last one is they're to blame, and you didn't have anything to do with it.
Yes.
Is that true?
No, not really.
In
And
what sense? In what sense?
in what sense is because their truth is different than mine.
True. Yeah, but I think the bigger, yeah, that's true. But the bigger sense is, and you said it, you said you didn't say anything.
I think yes.
Yes. What would have happened if, in the minute they walked in and started to take the conversation in a different direction, you said, "Oh, wait a second, time out. You guys are not taking this conversation in this direction. You just came in here, sit down, shut up, and catch up with what's going on, and we're going to proceed." You didn't do that.
I didn't do that. Yes.
Yes. So, but your body told you that they were 100% to blame for
Yes.
what happened, and you didn't have anything to do with it. That's the reality. The internal reality came through your filters, and your body told you was true. Turns out, if you examine it, like we just did this a second ago, there was a falsehood. You could have done something about it. You could have stopped it. and I understand why you didn't. Okay, it's not to blame you or anything. Not to blame you or anything. It's just the whole point is to show that what our body tells us and our brain tells us is true in kind of a knee-jerk fashion isn't always true when we take a moment to examine it. But we don't examine it if we don't know what we're trying to examine, what we're looking at. What's the mechanism that's causing the anger? When we know that mechanism, then we can ask ourselves the question: did they really do something bad and wrong? Were we really negatively impacted by what happened? And if so, was it a big impact or not so big impact? Were they really 100% to blame? We do with it. Once you know that those are the kinds of questions to ask, then the truth starts to come out. Okay, as opposed to just stabbing in the dark as well. What question could I ask about this situation? That's not the point. The point is I got angry, so now I know what questions I need to investigate because now I know why I got angry.
Okay.
The majority of people walking around the planet today do not have that understanding of anger, and that's why there's so much anger in the world today. Because we have the ability, you have the ability to recognize, oh yeah, I could have said something and stopped it, and I didn't.
Yes.
That's not something you lack. So we all have the ability to recognize the difference between what our bodies is true and our brain in an automatic fashion and what really is true, that we can use our intellect and our experience and our life wisdom to know what is true. And we all have that ability. It's just people are walking around pretending that anger is directly caused by the stuff that happens outside of them. It's not. It's part of the picture. Yes. It's part of the picture, but it's not the whole picture.
Exactly. And then something so silly, depending on your personality and the intensity of that truth that you see that you're talking about can escalate.
Yes, absolutely.
To like I would have like other people left. And I'm like, I don't have to leave. Wait a minute, why am I here? I kind of like realized, I'm like, I don't have to leave. We just have to help the moderator go back to where we were before, and somebody else did it. Thanks God.
Yeah, well, you know what? There's what I just shared with you. Those three filters is really just half of that mechanism. There's another set. Those are the ways we think and perceive. Okay.
Yes.
There's another set of causes that are also invisible, which is our automatic behavior tendencies.
Okay.
And one of our behavior tendencies is to punish.
Uh-huh.
So leaving is a form of punishing.
Yes.
And it's like automatic. It's like our bodies get that urge to leave because you're so upset about what they did. You either want to punch them or you'll do something more polite, which is you'll leave. But either way, you're giving them the message that you don't approve of what they did and that you're taking offense to it and that you're giving them a negative consequence.
I got it.
For what they're doing.
Yes. I turn my side to that. Yes,
and that happens, and that's why there's a lot of violence in the world today, because we have that. What comes through our filters tells us that people are doing bad and wrong and stupid stuff, and that we didn't have anything to do with it. We were victimized and all that. And then our impulse is to, if they don't immediately own our impulse is to apply consequence to them, and so we'll hit them or take some physical action or take
Or
some
yell at them.
legal action or yell or make a face or take ourselves away. Sometimes in a marriage, if you're having an argument with your spouse and one spouse gets really angry, they may say, I'm not going to discuss this anymore. And they leave. And it seems like they're being reasonable, but they're actually punishing the person that they're taking themselves away from because they're angry and upset and because they don't want to do anything. Sometimes they do it because they don't want it to escalate where they might do something that they later regret,
Hmm.
to a greater extent. So I'm not saying it's necessarily a bad strategy. It does have a component of punishment to it
Yes.
where
Yes.
you're taking yourself away. You're not engaging in the conversation anymore. You're kind of telling the person that, they may be concerned, but you're not caring about how concerned they are. You're going to do your thing and walk away.
And walk away. Okay. But there are also moments, in talking about these also, there are also moments that is good, like for instance, in a domestic case.
Yes.
There are instances when you say, "Oh, okay, time off. I think you need to cool down
Yeah.
and let's separate."
And there are ways
And
you can do. You can abort the conversation in a good way, where you let the other person what your intention is and why you're doing it, and you're not being nasty or punitive, but you want some space. Maybe it'll be better if we talked about this later. My intention is to come back and finish the conversation. So I'm not trying to avoid discussing this with you. I just think it's better for both of us if we take a little time out and then cool off a little bit and then come back and discuss. That's all fine. And it doesn't have that sting of punishment that comes when you just pick up, turn your back, and walk away.
yes, yes.
Yeah.
So, and that is fascinating because we can see it in both ways. We can see it from the person that gets angry, and we can also see it from the that leaves what the angry person is doing.
Yeah.
So they both have a different perspective of that truth.
Well, it's interesting. They have their different perspectives, but it all boils down to these same three filters. If you're having those two people, let's say in a marriage, they're both angry. They're having an angry argument, so they're both angry. They have different perspectives on something, okay? Which is why they're not resolving it quickly. But they both have those same three filters. They both see the other one as being wrong or doing something bad. They both feel that they're negatively impacted by the other person, and they both are blaming the other person for being 100% responsible, and I didn't have anything to do with it. And we know in like a marriage, it's very rare that a problem comes up or a behavior that's problematic comes up where both people don't have something to do with that behavior pattern being recurrent. You know,
Yes.
they may not have caused it, but they certainly aren't doing what they might need to do to modify it or stop it or something. So in a marriage, you can always say there's some degree of shared responsibility for any problem that occurs in the marriage. Now, you may not be able to easily identify each person's part and how much percentage each role is playing, but each of them is going to have some degree of participation in that problem. And to take the position that the other person is 100% responsible is usually a lie, but it's what our body tells us is the truth about them, the other person. And so it's hard to deal with it when you see the other person as just being totally responsible and you're not in the picture when you are in reality, you know? And the other person sees that because the other person clearly sees your part. They may not see their part, but they sure as hell see your part. Okay. So when you're denying any part, that just infuriates them because they know you do. And you're just as blind to your part as they're blind to their part. So that's what a lot of anger comes from, this blindness to A, how anger gets produced, and also to B, what the real truth is about those things that are coming through our filters.
Hi, I'm very happy to know you are here watching our podcast today. It is an honor to be featuring so many entrepreneurs on the journeys of their inside voice, their accent that is not an accident. And we want to reach out more people like you who are creating a better world of diversity, inclusiveness, equity, and belonging. So please take a moment to hit the subscribe button below, like, and share to others.
And even if you want to leave a comment, that'll be nice. Thank you for your support. And now back to the episode.
Our filters.
Okay. And so now we know these three steps, right? These three
Mm-hmm.
the process.
Yes.
Now, how can we prevent it?
Well, you have to the first part is understanding you can't. That those three filters are there because they become conditioned into your being, into your brain,
Okay.
into your body. They happen automatically. It's like a knee-jerk reflex. You can't help it. You can't stop it. The fact that you become aware of it is good, but it doesn't stop it. So it's going to happen. Sometimes people get angry with themselves because they know the three things now, and then they go, "But I did it again." And then I did it again. I did it. Of course, you're going to do it again because that's how your body's programmed to respond. Okay.
Okay.
So in the beginning, you're not going to stop the automatic reactions, but each time it comes up, you can look at those three things and ask whether they're true or not. And if the same situation keeps coming up, or you replay it in your mind and you keep being angry about it, you can remember what the truth is that you discovered the first time you did that. Okay, so it's easier the second, the third, the fourth, the fifth, the sixth, or the 100th time you do it. Okay, and then for a while, it stops becoming automatic. So there are things that when I was in my 20s and 30s, and I didn't know any of this stuff, that used to trigger me all the time, very easily. Okay. And then I started figuring this stuff out. It took a couple years, and then I worked on myself for a while. Every time I would get triggered, and I would remember this process. Okay, I'd ask the questions, and I'd say, "Oh, that's not completely true." When you do that a whole bunch of times over months and maybe a year or two, after a while, the things that used to trigger me don't trigger me anymore because I now see them, automatically start to see them in a different light, in a more truthful light.
Okay.
So I might see if a problem comes up in a relationship, let's say, and my body's telling me my partner's 100% to blame. I might start to automatically see, well, I probably played a role here. I don't know what it is yet, but I got to look and see how I might have played a role here. And so I can't blame them 100%. So that starts to happen automatically. After you've done enough of this practice with realizing that your body's telling you one thing and your brain's telling you one thing, but the truth is actually different.
Okay. I'm taking notes. This is phenomenal.
But it's hard. I mean, it's not, as you can tell, this is not what we normally do.
No.
So we're not good at it. We're not practiced and skilled at it. It takes some work. And that's what I do with people in my coaching program. I can teach them the kinds of principles we're talking about very quickly. But the real power in the coaching is that we get to take examples from their life where they've been angry and they didn't have this model. They didn't have this understanding. And we go back and say, okay, now let's apply this, what we now know, to that situation. Can you see how you were looking at it then? Can you see how now let's work together to see how some of those things may not be true? And then they do that and they go like, wow, I wish I'd have known that then. I wish I'd have seen that then. Well, I know, but at least you see it now. And so if it comes back up again, you can what we did here. So when you get enough practice doing that, then you start to get some skill at it and get to be good at it.
So it's basically creating habits on the different triggers that you have.
Yeah. New habits to counteract your old the habits that become ingrained in you. So those are habits too. So, but you want to develop new habits now that will counteract anything that's deficient or defective about those old habits.
And that's incredible.
Which, by the way, is our challenge in life. It's not just anger.
Yes.
Every aspect of life, we have conditioning that causes us problems and difficulties. And the game of life is to figure out how we've been programmed in that arena. So we're talking about anger as an arena, okay?
Yes.
But if you're talking about relationships, if you're talking about money and finances or business, how have we been programmed to have problems in our lives that we'd rather not have? Can we identify the filters that are responsible for those problems? Is it going to be different than the anger ones we just talked about? But can we identify them and then start asking, are they true or are they not true? And then we start to build better habits, better principles, perspectives, better strategies. And then we find we're more successful in life or happier in life, as we go forward, because we figured some of the internal programming, we figured it out and know how to overcome it. Because we all get programmed. You can't not get programmed. You're programmed by your culture, where you're born, your family you're born into, the neighborhood you're born into, the religion you get assigned or get introduced to, the teachers you have, the books you read, the television programs you watch, the movies you watch. We all get programmed. And some of it may be good, some of it probably is good, or wouldn't have stuck around. But some of it causes us lingering problems that we don't. Again, it's all happening sort of underground. We don't see the programming working, but it's there.
Okay, which leads me to the next question. What is the impact society has on stress and anger?
We get programmed with so many messages, many of which are false. I mean, one of the big things in the world today is disinformation. Everybody's talking about disinformation. They just don't realize how big the problem is. It's 100 times bigger than what they're focused on. They're focusing social media promoting disinformation, the media promoting disinformation, politicians promoting disinformation. The whole world is filled with disinformation. Our teachers give us disinformation. Our friends give us disinformation. Our family gives us disinformation. Our doctors give us disinformation. The people who write books, experts, give us misinformation. It's just loads and loads and loads and they're not intentionally doing it. They think they're giving the right good stuff, but they misunderstand it, and they're just promoting their mistaken ideas, and people soak them up and they get incorporated into our bodies. So whatever society you're in, you're going to get messages. Whatever culture you're in, you're going to get messages. They're going to get incorporated into your body, and you're going to have to come to grips with them at some point if they're causing problems. If they're not causing problems, then most of the time we don't do anything about them. For example, a person can be super, super, super religious in whatever religion they are, and they can be very happy and successful in their life, have a wonderful family, a wonderful marriage, and that's great, and there's nothing to really argue with. There's nothing to fix necessarily. Now, you may disagree with their particular religion or religious stance, things that they believe, but as long as they're not hurting other people, as long as they're good members of society and they're enjoying their lives, who's to say they shouldn't be allowed to do that, and we shouldn't mess with their internal beliefs. But if you're, on the other hand, if somebody's super, super religious and they're going around killing people because of it, then that's something that may need to be addressed. Their religious beliefs may need to be addressed.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, and that is incredible. I think that one of the in my personal opinion, is one of the big impacts in society is the amount of the information we're dealing with, and especially now we're putting it to our kids from an early age.
Yeah.
Like information that even though where I came from, I didn't have a grasp when I was growing up to those type of information.
I didn't either. For example, I believe that if you gave me a textbook and it said something, I believed it was true. There was no doubt in my mind. If it was in a textbook, that meant it was true. And I later came to find out a lot of stuff that were in the textbooks that I was given through my education were not true. And I was really shocked when I found that out.
Some things were wrong, yes. So, but then now we have so much misinformation and so much information that our children are getting probably with the wrong ideas. That triggers them.
Yes, absolutely. They've been made very sensitive. They're very sensitive to things. They've been taught to be triggered and irritated and angered by various offenses that didn't used to be considered offenses, but now are kind of blown out of proportion and to be major offenses. So, and in a way, you can't. you can't stop the fact that human beings get conditioned by their current society, whatever it is. It's no different than if we lived 1,000 years ago. We would have been conditioned by whatever the prevailing ideas and systems that were in place then. They didn't have AI, they didn't have cell phones, they didn't have Facebook, but that's all programming us now. So you can't stop the programming. The best thing we can do is teach our kids to understand that everything in life is going to program them, and a lot of it's not going to be true.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to give them skills to be able to figure out what's more true from things that are blatantly untrue, so that they can make some distinctions and realize that some of that stuff's going to get soaked into their brain, and it's going to be automatic, and they're just going to have to learn how to deal with that. But that's everybody in life has that same challenge.
Yes.
They're not any different than adults in that sense.
And that leads me to think that we as parents, like my daughter is a teenager, and we have it like now a little more difficult, because when you tell them something, they go and search it in the internet and they say, no, it's not true.
And as parents, we need to realize that some of the things we tell our kids may not be true. So they can be right, but when they research and find that they might be right. Now, sometimes they can be wrong too. But we have to be open to the fact that our kids can give us feedback that maybe we're wrong about some stuff, or maybe we need to readjust our thinking about stuff. And then that's actually a good, when the parents are helping the kids and the kids are helping the parents, or in any relationship, when each of you is helping the other one see through their blind spots, that's very good. That's a good kind of relationship.
It is a good relationship, yes.
But sometimes as parents, we get authoritarian and say you shouldn't challenge your parents and all that kind of stuff. In this day and age, that doesn't work anymore. It maybe worked a long time ago when everybody had that, code of ethics, but it doesn't today. It doesn't work.
Or we get to the point where we say, well, this is my house, and in this house we do.
Yeah, you do it my way. That's Neanderthal thinking.
So, in basic, stress happens to every human being.
Well, problems happen to every human being. So it's hard to go through life and not have problems.
And not have problems.
Yeah. So and if you use the word stress to stand for problems, then you can say stress happens to everybody. Now, a lot of people in life have fewer problems than others.
Yes.
Like, for example, I've had very little anger in my life for the last 40 years, where I had tons of it in my 20s and 30s, because I figured out how to solve the problem and prevent the problem. And I understand the mechanism better than most people. And not everybody has that advantage. But I had that advantage, and consequently, I don't deal with a lot of anger. And if I do get angry about something now, I know immediately where it's coming from. I know immediately how to get rid of it. It doesn't last more than about a minute or 10, 15 minutes at the most. I can make it go away. Okay? Because I understand the mechanism. So they're different people will have different degrees of problems in life, and they'll be able to solve some of them, and they could probably solve a lot of them if they had the right input, the right coaching, the right frameworks of understandings, to solve whatever problems they're dealing with. So we all have this enormous reservoir of talent and problem solving ability that we don't even know we have, but you can tap, and everybody is tapped into something that they didn't think they could do or solve, but it turns out they had the ability all along. So they've done it. They look back and they say, oh, well, I had that in me all along. I just didn't know I did. I didn't know how to use it. I didn't know how to apply it properly. But so there's lots and lots of potential within all of us to solve a lot of the problems and stress that we experience. We just haven't been guided in the right ways. And a lot of the information we get about how to deal with stress, a lot of it's like manage your stress, which to my way of thinking is really not great, because you're just dealing with symptoms. You're not really ever learning how to understand the causes of the various problems you're having so that you can shut them off at their roots, instead of just forever and ever just struggling with the symptoms, So it's how you approach problems will have something to do with how many you end up with. You're only dealing with symptoms all the time, you're going to have more problems than the person that says, I don't really want to deal with symptoms anymore. I want to get at causes. And I'd rather deal with my problems that way. They're going to have a lot less problems in their life.
So we have to get to the cause of it and then
Yes.
figure
Yeah.
out what is that how is that we react to things.
Yeah, and the problem is we can get away with not doing it. It's allowed, it's permitted. Everybody's okay with it, but we know it's not. It's hurting people. It's really damaging them. So we can get away with it, but the ideal, the best, the thing to really shoot for is, can I solve my problems by understanding their root causes and deal with the root causes? And unfortunately, there are only a small percentage of people today that really take that philosophy and run with it.
Yes.
But it's a very good philosophy if you embrace it.
And I love our conversation. We are getting to the end, and before we finish, I would like to give you the opportunity to talk about how you work with your clients and how they can find you, how people can find you.
Sure. Well, up until now, the best way I've worked with clients is in one-on-one individual coaching programs that only last 10. So what's amazing is I found I can turn people around. People have been angry most of their life, haven't been able to figure out what to do about it, maybe even gone to therapists or anger management experts, haven't gotten any results or much. In 10 sessions, I can turn them completely around, show them how to use this approach, show them how to get good at using it. So now they have their hands on the controls, and they're in control of their anger, not the other way around. You can do it in 10 sessions, which is like mind-blowing to me that you can happen that fast. So that's what I mainly do. But by the end of March, I'll have my book out, which also talks about the things I teach people in that 10-session program. So 2 ways people can get the benefit of what I've learned. They can work with me individually, or they can get the book when it comes out and try to do it on their own. Now, again, it's challenging. So there are some people who will be able to do it from just the information in the book. But if you do that, if you read the book when it comes out and you try to apply the principles and you feel like I'm not getting this, or it's not making a difference, then that would be the time to consider doing the 10-session coaching program to get really some expert coaching on it. But there'll be some people that will be able to do really well with just reading the book. So
excellent.
And that's not currently available. It won't be till the end of the last week in March that it'll be. Just look for Dr. Orman's Life-Changing Anger Cure, and it should be on Amazon by the last week of March.
Excellent. Thank you, Dr. Orman. Is there any last thought that you would like to leave the audience with?
Yeah. Whenever I get the opportunity, there's one big myth about anger that I really like to bust each time I get a chance. And that a lot of times we believe that if you've been angry for a while, or you have anger issues for a while, even if they're just annoyance and irritation, or even the full-blown rage or whatever, there's this misconception that if once an angry person, always an angry person. It's not true. I mean, I used to be very, very angry. And if you'd asked me back then, did I ever think that would change, I would have told you no, because I didn't really believe it was going to change. And then I figured all this stuff out, and in the last 40 years, I said I've had almost no anger at all. So it's not, and I've worked with a lot of other people that have had that same result. So it's not true that once an angry person, always an angry person. If you get the right understandings, you get the right training, which again doesn't take long, you can change yourself from being an angry person to being a non-angry person and have all the benefits and avoid all of the problems that come with remaining an angry person and having a lot of anger in your life. So don't into that myth. Know that there is a solution, there is a cure, it is available, and don't put up with your anger because you think there's nothing can be done about it.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Dr. Orman. And to you, my audience, I want to remind you that you came to this world to love, because a great first, or God brought you here with love, to love one another. Thank you. See you next time. Bye.
Hi, it's Maritza here. If you like this episode of My Accent is No Accident podcast and would like to listen more like this, subscribe wherever you're listening to it or watching it. Leave us a nice review and share with your friends, family, and network. Thanks for listening.